Welcome to the Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2023. This webinar is part of Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2023. It is a collaboration between Law Society Pro Bono Services, the 5 Community Development Councils, National University of Singapore Faculty of Law, Singapore University of Social Sciences School of Law, Singapore Management University School of Law, the Singapore Corporate Council Association Pro Bono Chapter, and the Singapore Association of Social Workers, supported by the People's Association. I'm Eunice Chua, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. Today's webinar is Protect Yourself, How to Spot and Avoid Scams. First, some housekeeping matters. Today, we will be using Pigeonhole Live for the questions and answers. You can submit your questions at any point during the webinar and also upvote on any questions you would like answered. If you have a smartphone or tablet with you, just launch your internet browser and key in www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Next, key in our event passcode, which is LawCDC 2308, as shown on the slide. Alternatively, you can click on the link shared in the chat function to launch Pigeonhole Live on your device. If you are viewing this webinar on your desktop or laptop, you should receive an invitation to launch Pigeonhole. Please note that today's discussion is not intended to substitute any form of professional legal advice. If you require specific legal advice, please consult a lawyer. With that, I would like to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. First, we have Nicholas on my left. Nicholas has 20 years of diverse experience. He's a co-founder and board member in businesses, non-profits, and government. He has worked with Fortune 500 CEOs and headed up the region for an investor in digital-first education. Nicholas has also led a regional team for Visa, supporting the biggest internet businesses like Tencent, Alibaba, Ctrip, and Sea to manage their risks in digital transactions and serving on Visa's Asia-Pacific Merchant Sales and Solutions leadership. He is also a member of the National Crime Prevention Council, a non-profit organization committed to promoting public awareness of and concern about crime and to propagate the concept of self-help in crime prevention. Next is Wern-Jhien. Wern-Jhien is a director and co-founder of Setia Law LLC, a high-stakes dispute resolution and crisis management team in Singapore. Wern-Jhien has particular expertise in the fraud and asset recovery space. He has represented clients in numerous disputes involving fraudulent e-commerce transactions, financing fraud, payment processing fraud, and cryptocurrency fraud. He has led and successfully obtained multiple freezing and proprietary injunctions in aid of cross-border asset recovery efforts, including the first known instance of the grant of a proprietary injunction over cryptocurrencies in Singapore. Next, we have Rosie. Rosie is the Superintendent and Assistant Director of Scam Public Education Office, SPEO, of the Singapore Police Force. Public education for a vigilant and discerning public is key to combating scams. And to this end, SPEO was formed in early 2023 to expand outreach on scams by leveraging on partnerships across different public and private domains and customize engagement efforts for the different population segments to achieve a scam-smart nation. Superintendent Rosie Mcintyre has served more than 15 years in the SPF and has various postings, including Commanding Officer of Bukit Merah East Neighbourhood Police Centre and several operational stints in police divisions and Police HQ operations and department. So Nicholas, Wern-Jhien, and Rosie, thank you all for joining us today. And for you, the audience, thank you very much for tuning in. By the end of this session, you'll know more about common scam types, how to spot and avoid scams, and what to do should you or your loved ones realize you have been scammed. So let's start by looking at the common scam types. And with that, I will turn to Rosie to take us through what the police have observed, especially in the first half of this year regarding scams.
Thanks, Eunice. I'm happy to be here with the panelists as well. I think as a start, what the police has observed for the first 6 months of the year is that typically we will see the top scams being perpetrated through several contact methods. And I think the top 3 largely is phone calls, messaging platforms, as well as through the one that's shown on the screen, which is social media platforms. And I think this is largely because a lot of times, most of our Singaporeans are really quite digital natives, and they are very, very fluent and confident in using the internet and using their mobile phones to access a lot of information, as well as do a lot of tasks. Especially with the time of COVID, I think a lot more transition to the digital platforms has been seen as well. And that's why I think the scammers have used some of these platforms as the largest means of contacting the victims to getting them to perpetrate the scams. And I think if we see the key observations of the scam victims itself, we may observe that a large majority of the victims are actually the young youths as well as young working adults. And it stands at about 50% across the Singapore population. But I would like to highlight that although the youths and the young working adults are the most victims to e-commerce scams, job scams, as well as phishing scams, no one is actually, can avoid scams. You click a link and potentially you could be falling into the scam trap. So I think this is something that police force is really trying to emphasize, that nobody is protected. You need to really take on good cyber hygiene habits to make sure what you're doing does not allow the scammers to perpetrate their scams.
Thanks for that overview, Rosie. So really what you shared with us is that because of the way we conduct a lot of our lives today, this is a way for scammers to reach out to us, where before it might be more challenging, and scams can happen to anyone, really.
That's right.
Nobody is safe from being scammed.
That's right.
Nicholas, anything to add from NCPC's perspective?
Yeah, and maybe just also from my professional background, when I used to work in Visa, we used to coordinate a lot of law enforcement actions, cross-border. And to Rosie's point, actually, we think that the typical profile of somebody who is a scam victim could be somebody who's older, but actually, as Rosie mentioned, 50% or more are actually aged between 20 to 39.
Yeah.
And really anybody can be a victim, so nobody is safe, and you shouldn't think that way. We should always be on high alert.
Yes. And although being on high alert may be quite tiring, but today we'll be going through some scenarios, and hopefully as we talk through them, you would know what to look out for in these different kinds of circumstances. We are going to start with a job scam scenario. And as Rosie said, although many of the scam victims tend to be younger, anybody can actually fall for this one. Okay, so the scenario we have involves Max, who has been out of job for half a year. One day, he receives a WhatsApp message about someone hiring part-time internet workers. They're attractive, high commissions, and so he makes contact and gets the instructions on what he needs to do. At first, he's quite happy because he earns $100. His contact then asks if he wants to unlock exclusive missions that can earn him more. Max pays $500 for these exclusive missions. He is told he has earned $3,000 in commissions, and this leads him to start paying even more for more expensive exclusive missions. Unfortunately, after paying $4,000 and completing his latest set of missions, Max is not paid any commission, and when he can no longer contact the person, he realizes that something is wrong. So, Wern-Jhien, let's turn to you to talk us through this scenario. What should Max do now that he has realized something must be wrong?
Well, this kind of scenario happens a lot. So what we typically tell the victims to do is, firstly, make sure you preserve all available evidence. So I'm saying this because a lot of these scam victims, they tend to feel very ashamed of what happened, and they're ashamed of their initial responses. On hindsight, they don't want to make all those things public. But it's important for them to preserve the evidence, and then immediately lodge a police report. That's because police has very wide investigative powers. And for all you know, this scam that has been inflicted on Max could be part of a larger scam investigation that the police might be working on. So every little bit of information will definitely help. Second thing that Max should do, especially if the payments were made through bank transfers, is to report to his bank. And if he knows which bank the payments were made to, report to that other receiving bank as well. Now, the reason why I say this is sometimes if it's within 24 hours, 48 hours of a particular transfer, a bank may still be able to stop the transaction and even reverse the transaction. But obviously that is no longer possible if too much time has passed, which I think was probably the case with Max here. And lastly, I mean, depending on his appetite for litigation, there is a possibility of a self-help remedy. Max can pursue civil recovery claims. And this is basically the bulk of the type of cases we do as civil recovery lawyers. Now, the law provides people like Max a lot of tools to seek recovery, including tools to investigate and seek disclosure over the bank accounts that payments have been made to, and eventually to pursue the perpetrators themselves.
So tips from Wern-Jhien would be, number one, make sure you gather all that information and evidence, lodge a police report. Number two, if you think that your bank account has been compromised, quickly report to the bank. And number three, if you wish to consider trying to pursue a recovery, you could contact a lawyer or try to help yourself by pursuing a case in court, right? So this is maybe out of reach for most people, and many people might also find making police reports quite intimidating. So maybe we can take this chance to demystify that process for them. Rosie, could you share with us what can someone expect when they try and make a police report, and how can they do so? Must they go down physically to a station?
So with the times as well, we've had the platform for digital options where they can lodge the police reports online. And they can search for police services, e-services, where they will be brought to an electronic police station and they can lodge the report. I think as what Wern-Jhien has mentioned, critical is all the information, banking details, who you transferred them to. Is there any social media platform ID that we can tie down to who was involved, right? So what was the person's ID that they used to contact you? If you have chats with the subject or with the scammers, good to preserve. Don't just delete the whole entire chat. Keep it as it is. You can print screen or you can even just save it first so that you can attach it within the police report that you do online. So you don't necessarily have to go to a police station. There are e-services, but of course, like I will reiterate much later as well, always ensure you check the URL links of the websites that you are accessing. Because a lot of times I may be deviating here a little bit. They are spoofing, they are mimicking real legitimate websites to fish for your information. So that would be my key point. And I think that it's important to track all the information of when you did it, how you did it, what platforms you did it, what were the communication means, and all this should be incorporated within the report. Even if you're going down to a physical police station, you would need this information. So if you do it online, an IO will follow up with you subsequently, if they need more information as well. So there is always that additional information that you can provide. No issue at all.
Okay, so we can go to the police station. We can also go online to lodge the report, attach all those documents, your screenshots, any, details, any recorded calls, any messages, keep all of them and give them to the police.
That's right.
Yeah, and a reminder that when you lodge your report, please do so by keying in the address directly rather than following any dubious links.
Yeah. Or even when you search on search engines, we've recently seen a uptick in WhatsApp takeover, or where people search WhatsApp web, they want to try to access it on their desktop. Ends up they click the first few links, which are sponsored or advertisements, and ends up these are spoof. And the scammers then take over the account. So it could be profitable for scammers to spoof certain legitimate websites. It's always good to check the URL link.
Okay. Since we're on this topic and we had a question about URL links, maybe we segue into that before continuing with the job scam scenario. So how do we actually check the URL? What are the things to look out for? Our question was, does it mean that as long as it starts with HTTPS, that would mean it's legitimate? I wonder if Rosie or even Nicholas, feel free to jump in. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, right? It's sometimes quite difficult if you didn't take a look carefully on whether the URL is real or fake. One simple thing is if you're on a PC or on a laptop, if you hover your mouse over the link, sometimes there's a feature that allows you to preview for you, and you can tell whether what you're clicking on and what you're previewing is similar. That gives you a sense. The safer way to do it would be there'll be some kind of URL checkers. I think Google provides one that you can put the link in there, let it check and tell you it's safe before you click. Otherwise,
I think maybe looking at the URL link, sometimes they replace the O with a 0. So that could be like some of the telltale indicators. Right. We've seen how, for example, I'm just moving a little bit, the emails, they use maybe, for example, a specific company, a specific parcel service. And actually, when you hover on the email address, you will see that it's totally not from the legitimate source.
Something else.
So we just need to be a little bit more discerning about some of these links.
Okay, so in summary, let's make sure before we click, we hover over and we see what actually appears, right? Is it really the domain name of that company, or is it some complicated string of alphabets? And we also look out for things like, is it a O? Is it a 0? Are there extra alphabets? Are there misspelt domain names? These might all be telltale signs for us to look out for, right? Okay, back to the job scam scenario. Let's also think about how we can, if we were Max's friend, maybe, or family member, and, if Max had shared with us about this scam, what would the signs be that would help us to inform him, to tell him, maybe this isn't such a good idea? So, Nicholas, maybe you kick us off.
Just looking at Max's case, and our fellow panelists may have other inputs as well. When I look at Max's case, I think I wonder if it was a job that he applied for, or was it unsolicited, right? Was it that somebody just approached him? In this case, it looked like somebody just approached him. So I think that's really, for me, that's really a warning sign. The other thing was that you get high pay for doing very little. Right, so it's almost, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. So, doing very little but getting a lot of pay, you should ask yourself, why is that so? The other case, sometimes they ask you to make a payment first before you get a job or you move on. And in this case, they paid him something, and then he had to make more payments, and it usually ends up paying more and more. And I guess if you're asking for like personal details, asking you to transfer money, all these things, just always be careful.
Okay, so just for us to remember, if it's unsolicited, you didn't ask for it, suddenly this job offer comes, that's one flag. Another one is high pay for little effort, right? Another flag. And the third one you mentioned was if you're asked to transfer money first, then that is also something to worry about. Wern-Jhien or Rosie, anything to add to that?
I think Max's case is really typical. They give you a little bit, they give you your $10 commission, and then they after that ask you to commit to paying them something to commit for a bigger commission. And I think that's very typical. So if you're going to get a little bit something, you just got to be cautious what you're getting yourself into. I wanted to also share that sometimes there could be scenarios where the victim actually is looking for a job, right? They do come across a post and they say, okay, I will find out a little bit more. There was this particular case that I would like to just share. He looked out for a job posting, found it on Carousel to say, oh, okay, maybe I should do a simple posting of a residential unit that's for rental. And if someone picks up on that posting, shows some interest, he gets a certain amount of money from it. He actually may be perpetrating the offense and the scam itself because he's helping to post. The victim, fortunately for him, did some checks subsequently and realized that actually this property agent that he was working for was using a different number. So he checked with the CEA. He also checked with the property company whether they did have such a property agent. It eventually came to there is such an existing property agent with such an existing license number. However, the mobile number that he's actually using is different. So it went down to that level of detail for the victim to realize, hey, I could be perpetrating a scam. And when he confronted the scammers, there was this conversation where the scammer said, no, I'm using another number. That's my personal number, blah, 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 trying to justify the situation. So I thought on the flip side to Max's situation, this is the alternate.
Yes, and I think the message here is also to help us to be aware that checking, maybe, scammers are so sophisticated now that just a cursory check, to see whether this company exists or there is this license number or there is this person may not be good enough because someone can try and assume someone else's identity, right? And we have a question coming in online. Thank you for the questions. That says that it seems scammers are always ahead in their game, right? And despite all this publicity, still so many fall prey. And maybe it is about, some loophole somewhere in the system, but how can people feel safe? Especially if something like a job search, right? You really want to find a job and you are looking for an opportunity. Wern-Jhien, any thoughts on that?
So I think that the reality now is that when when mobile phones became the norm, that also meant that many of the safeguards, the traditional safeguards that protected, an average person from fraud has disappeared because the fraudsters have now direct access to almost every single person in the world through messaging platforms, social media. So it's from a policy point of view, from a legal point of view, it's very difficult to come out with a ready fix because it's such a complicated and widespread problem. And I guess the most immediate, tangible step that we all can collectively take is really spread awareness and educate all of ourselves. And and I don't think we should just sit back and wait for example, government to enact programs. We can go back and we can communicate with our family members and to make sure our father, our parents, our kids, they can be more discerning in the use of social media and mobile applications.
So you're saying that we shouldn't be frozen in fear, right? We should still be able to transact online and have the confidence to do so. But let's look out for those and spread awareness, right? What are the things to look out for? What are the signs and the common steps that we should take to protect ourselves? So just on that, what are those basic cyber hygiene steps that everyone who has a mobile phone and is going to buy something online with it should take? What are those steps? Maybe Nicholas or Rosie?
Well, I'll start as a little bit biased. At NCPC, we launched this app called Scam Shield, and everyone should install it. It blocks this calls and text messages. It doesn't capture 100% because there are always new scam numbers coming up, but at least you continue to add to the database, the blacklist in that sense. Also, just to encourage everyone to install what we call the 2FA, right? Second factor authentication for all your accounts, whether it's your social media, your bank accounts, your WhatsApp and Telegram, just turn that on.
Yeah, I think sharing Nicholas' point, I think when NCPC launched the I Can Act Against Scam campaign with SPF, that was a call to action, right? For everyone to add certain security features, whether it's Scam Shield to FTA, or to, act, then check, make verifications along the way, as well as to tell the fellow friends or family or even authorities. The scam situation, it's $1 million, if not $1 billion industry. They are ever evolving because to them, that's how they will make the money. They are ahead of the curve. They are ahead in the R&D because they want to cast their net as wide as possible and capture as much of as many victims as possible. So I think that's why we as individuals, we don't see it as an industry, but they are very syndicated. They are very professional, and it's not as easy as what it used to be, where it could be a single person trying to be a fraudster, trying to cheat people of money. It's not the case. It has evolved, definitely. So which is why we're seeing variants after variants, and people need to have that critical thinking to pick up on these.
Yes, and we also need to be, take those steps. Make sure you set up your account such that there is two-factor authentication that puts a hurdle, right, for the scammer. So it's not so easy to access the account, right? Get your antivirus, get your scam shield so that you can get some warning messages. Yeah, so let's all do that. Before we move to the scenario, our next one, just one question that has got quite a lot of interest online, and I'll maybe post that to Wern-Jhien. It goes, how do we detect a fake QR code? Nowadays, and even at FIDReC recently, we saw a case where someone received a letter in the post, purportedly from the HDB, with a QR code. And when the person scanned the code, supposed to be HDB website, made payment, but it was not. So how do we tell, right? QR code, just some dots.
Before that, just to clarify, I did check with HDB on that case. Actually, it was a real case, so it wasn't a scam.
Okay,
Yes.
so maybe it was something else. It wasn't the code specifically, but the fact that there was some malware on the person's phone, possible as well. Okay. Right, but back to QR codes.
Yeah, maybe I will deflect this question to maybe the more the more qualified people on this panel.
I think in particular for the HDB case, where the QR code, when the member of public or the resident had received that letter, how it came about was subsequently they posted it on social media, right? If I recall correctly, this case. And it made the rounds where people started to question, hey, is this real? Is it fake? And an individual's questioning of such a letter actually is exactly what we need from the public, right? Where you question a letter you've received, whether it's legit or not. I think the important thing is whether then you do the act, check, tell. Whether then you verify with the authorities, hey, I do stay in HDB, but what is this outstanding thing that you say I should pay? Make the checks with the HDB branch, do that verifications. And if indeed you feel it's a bit suspicious, tell your friends and colleagues and say, or check with the authorities and verify. Recently, MOS Sun Xuanling also shared online about this flyer that was going around. I think it was for some dengue mosquito thing, right? And we had to do some verifications also to see whether it's a scam, is it not a scam? Is this flyer with a QR code legitimate? Yeah. So I think it's always important, ask yourself, if something is for free, something's asking you for money, make the necessary verifications.
Okay. So
Because
even before you scan the QR code, if it's from some government agency asking you to pay something, you can always call to check, right?
Yes,
before
that's right.
you scan.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's always good, since we are parting with our money, to make those verifications.
And Nicholas, just now when you talked about, links, before you click, you can hover. For QR codes, is there a way to?
Well, I don't know of any way to. Maybe there's some software that allows you to check the QR codes. I don't know of any personally. But I agree, Rosie, right? Just in this case, in any case, just apply the act, check, tell before you. To me, I would just as a default treat all QR codes as suspicious.
Okay, so I think there's no magic to the QR code, right? You may not be able to tell, but the important thing is to make sure that you have this healthy level of suspicion and skepticism, so that when you see a flyer, you see QR codes posted for, lucky draw, anything attractive, you can always verify by calling that organization before you scan and follow through with the link. Okay. So we have covered quite a lot of ground in our first scenario. And in our second scenario, we're going to look at a fake friend call scam. So here we have Wendy. She picks up her mobile one afternoon, and then this conversation takes place.
Hello, who is this?
Hey Wendy, just want to update you I changed my number.
Huh? Who is this?
You guess who am I?
I really don't know.
You don't recognize my voice ah? I always eat with you at Jurong East Leh.
Is it Johnson?
Yeah, Johnson. See, remember ma?
Oh, hello. How have you been?
I'm good. But I lost my phone, so I changed my number. So remember to update this number ah?
Okay, sure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
1 week later.
Hello?
Hey Wendy,
Hey, Johnson.
listen ah. My father is in hospital. I need some money to pay for his bill. I don't know who to ask. Can you help me? You can transfer to this bank account.
So in the end, Wendy transfers the money to Johnson and ends up helping him with more and more payments. Now, Nicholas, helping our friends is something that seems very expected in our culture in Singapore. How could Wendy have responded in this scenario without feeling like she's doing something very unnatural to her?
Well, first off, I have to say that the world is getting into quite new territory domain as far as AI and deep fake is concerned, right? The fake friends, the fake calls, video technology will get more and more matured. So I think all the more we have to be on alert and vigilant. I think in this case for Wendy, perhaps some of the things that she could have done, she could have maybe asked for a video call just to check if she hadn't deleted the original number, right? To check with the original number whether this is the, if she's, first of all, she has to be suspicious or be on alert to do that check, or verify with other sources, right? With common friends, family, whether this is legitimate. And yeah, I don't know, panelists, anything to add?
Okay, so that would mean that, once you receive a call, again, it's unsolicited, right? So we become a bit suspicious. We try and find out a bit more. If someone tells you that they are in need, you have some common friends, you can check with the common friends. You can ask for a video call, just to show your sympathy, right? And if it's a real person, okay, so be it.
Or even meet up.
Or even meet
Request to
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, meeting up is probably very safe, right? You won't have any issue with deep fakes and all that you spoke about.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay. And Wern-Jhien.
Well, the technology for holographic
Oh.
meetup.
Wow, that's
Okay, not there yet. Okay. So Wern-Jhien, assuming that Wendy realizes something is wrong, maybe she calls a mutual friend and they say, hey, no, Johnson is perfectly fine, right? And what should she do at that point? Yeah.
well, I mean, I'll say the same thing as I said earlier. First thing she should do is alert the police, file a report, even if it's just a suspicion, because the police can investigate and preserve evidence. But beyond that, if it's a case involving an AI-generated voice call, it's going to be very tough because you don't know who is the fraudster. But like my mom always tell me, just follow the money, right? And again, if the fraud is big enough, the circumstances are conducive for Wendy to invoke self-help remedy by taking the case to court, and she can basically try to apply for disclosure orders as against the bank account into which she paid the money, and try to investigate who was the actual owner of that account. Was it Johnson or was it another person? And at this stage, excuse me if I digress a bit, but I just wanted to highlight this problem with money mules, because in a lot of these scam cases that we have encountered, and money is paid into accounts. And then upon investigation, you realize that those accounts are in fact borrowed accounts. That means is a case where the account owner loaned or allowed somebody else use of the account, and that somebody else is really using the account to basically just as a mule account, basically. So the challenge we face in a lot of these recovery cases is that even if we bring proceedings against the account owner, it may turn out that the account owner was completely innocent of the fraud. They may have been arguably negligent or even reckless in allowing the use of the account, but they were definitely not dishonest. But I think a step in the right direction recently is when our parliament tabled, I can't recall if it has been passed, new legislation that seeks to criminalize the act of allowing the use of your bank account and bank account credentials in circumstances where you did so negligently or recklessly. So I think that's a good development.
Okay, so in this fake friend situation, you would have the account number and details, right, that Johnson had provided you to transfer the money. So Wendy can, of course, report to the police, but she can also on her own seek the help of a lawyer to go to that bank, the bank, right, of the receiving account, so Johnson's account, to try and identify who actually owns it. She'll need the help of a lawyer. She can't do it herself. Can she just call the bank and say, oh, I transferred money to you?
No, unfortunately not, because banks are bound by banking secrecy obligations, so they cannot disclose account owner identity or information about the accounts without a court order. So to that extent, she needs to consult a lawyer, and the lawyer will then help her file the correct application in court.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Rosie, would you have something to add on the use of mule accounts and what the police is doing to try and stop money from flowing out of Singapore?
So I think there are some whole of government efforts in trying to deal with money going out. But a lot of times, I think what we're trying to do is locally with the legislative changes is to really ensure people don't unwittingly let their accounts be misused or knowingly allow people to misuse their accounts, especially even their SingPass, because their SingPass can quite easily allow the scammers, if they sell it to a scammer for $1,000 or so, the scammer is going to use it to create bank accounts under their names. And these would then perpetrate the entire crime. So it is so important with these legislative changes that people are aware, knowing or unknowingly, it will be a negligent act that you will be held accountable for. So we always say don't share your credentials, but this time there is going to be a bit of a bite to it as well. If I can circle back to the situation that Wendy faced, I think in fake friend calls, a lot of times the scammers will not say who they are. They will always make you guess, and then they will bite on whoever you say their name would be, and they will assume that role. So I would really caution you receive an unknown call, assuming to be your friend. I think you better take it with a pinch of salt. Don't give any names. Ask the person to provide their name. And the next step is once you end that conversation, call back the old number first. I think that's a safeguard that you can immediately do to really just verify. The next thing I would then recommend, covering a little bit more on the Scam Shield that Nicholas talked about, there is the Scam Shield bot. And this bot with crowdsourcing, if you put in the number, if other people have reported this number, it will flag as it's been reported before. So potentially it could be a scam number. It helps you make the next course of decision making to save the number or not. So I think these are some of the things that people should take away from fake friend call in terms of what they can do to help protect themselves, and how the legis will make even people who are unwilling or unknowingly becoming money mules be accountable for their actions. So please, you need to take note of this as we share more information in the upcoming months. We will be covering, the SPF will be covering quite a bit on these legis changes and how it affects the public as well.
Okay, so we can look forward to more information about these changes to the law that will make people who allow their accounts or give their credentials away more accountable for that. Yeah. And specifically for fake friend call scams, Rosie, you've warned us that when someone keeps asking you to guess who they are, alarm bells should ring for
That's right.
you. And then the simple way you suggested is just call that your friend on the
Original
old
number.
number that you had just to check. Yeah, it could be that they are still using that number. And finally, the other tip you shared was to use Scam Shield, because Scam Shield will, because of other people reporting, may be able to flag the number, right? But of course, we should know that Scam Shield is still not perfect.
Yes.
So still exercise this healthy suspicion and skepticism, right?
Yes.
Okay. Nicholas, there are many kinds of fake friend call scams. Would you have any stories to tell us that will really help the message sink home?
Well, there's been quite a bit of fake friend scam calls, and we have this site called scamalert.sg where you can come and share your stories. One of the recent ones we received just 2 weeks back. In this case, it started in the same way, right? The scammer calls, asks the victim to guess his identity, delete the old number, same thing. The next day, the scammer called and said that, oh, he needs help to update his mobile number on the DBS Bank app. And he claims that he's spoken to DBS Bank and that, but he wasn't sure how to do it. So he sent a screenshot of the app and asked the victim to help him to update the number on the app. And after that, after he successfully updated the number, then he told the victim that, oh no, it takes 12 hours to take effect. And now he got this urgent payment to his renovation contractor he needs to make. And, cite friendship, blame his poor internet connection, couldn't turn on video call, and the victim got scammed more than $3,000. So it's a lot of different MO, a lot of different ways of manipulating of unfortunate victims.
Yeah, so if we go to scamalert.sg, we will be able to see stories that other scam victims have shared. And if you want to, bring awareness to your situation, that is one platform, scamalert.sg.
That's right.
And of course, Scam Shield, which Rosie and Nicholas both mentioned earlier, you can also report through Scam Shield. Very easy, right? Just on your phone, say the number, what was the message, and that's a report done.
We will share some QR codes. This one legit QR codes on the WhatsApp channel, as well as the Scam Shield bot. So you can then immediately, it will be in your WhatsApp, and then you can check in the number and you can verify. I mean, it's a 1-layer check.
Okay, thank you. And would there be any other comments on this fake friend scenario before we move to the next one? I'll throw this open.
I think aside from immediate assistance for money, sometimes there is variance as to any other scam typology where they may ask you to download certain things to help me make a reservation. I can't access the link. Can you help me click the link, make the reservation? And that evolves into a phishing scam. Okay, because they may say, oh, I can't access this link. I'm not sure why, or my credit card details can't be captured. Could you access this link and just help me make a reservation, put a deposit? And actually, when you click the link, you provide your credentials, your credit card credentials on the context of helping a friend put the deposit for the reservation. You are essentially letting the scammers see all your card credentials or banking credentials as you provide that payment. And subsequently, before you know it, unauthorized payments made on your account. Yeah, so variance, I think.
Yeah, so just like our audience member said, right, scammers are so sophisticated. The scam keeps changing, so we also have to be alert that you don't think that, oh, this person didn't ask me straight away for money, just asked me to download, means it's safe, right? So we should treat all this with some suspicion and do our checking, right?
Indeed.
Okay.
But another variant just one last one. Another variant that I saw a few times during the COVID years was what is called the CEO fraud. So that means personnel in the finance department of any company. This was back in the work from home days, right? We receive calls or SMSs or emails from someone purporting to be the CEO and basically instructing that person to to transfer money out to a particular party. And because in those when you're working from home and it's in the context of a boss, a senior personnel, they don't dare to question, and they feel that it was their obligation to carry out the instructions. So we have seen quite a number of those cases, and because it involved corporations, the amount scammed was, some of the cases were pretty substantial.
So also a reminder that it may not be your friend. It could be your boss. It could be your colleague in finance, right? Trying to ask you for some favor or to do something for them. Yeah. All right. We'll move to the next kind of scam scenario, right? We want to, cover more so that we are all more aware. This is a investment scam scenario. We have John, and he saw some advertisements on social media about cryptocurrency trading on XYZ platform, promising returns of more than 15%. And many comments were on that post from people saying how good the investment was. John was interested and he provided his contact details. Soon, Mark reached out to him. Over many chats and calls, Mark convinced John to invest $10,000 and sent him a payment link. John paid by credit card. Mark then sent updates and screenshots to John to show how much his investment was growing, and used this to convince him to invest another $15,000. Mark continued to persuade John to invest more, but at that point, John wanted to withdraw his profits. Mark then said, his funds were frozen due to inactivity and he needed to pay $5,000 to unfreeze the funds. Because John was so worried about losing his money, he paid the $5,000. But unfortunately, even after that, he did not receive his profits. And after more and more excuses and delays from Mark, he then realized something was wrong. Okay, Wern-Jhien, right? Perhaps one of the reasons John got into this scam in the first place was perhaps because he did not understand what cryptocurrency really was. And he really thought that it was something that could gain him this 15% returns. Maybe you could help by demystifying cryptocurrency for us.
So cryptocurrency is a form of digital currency, quote unquote. But unlike Singapore dollars or USD, it is not a currency that is backed by any government or central bank. It exists purely as a private initiative, and it effectively seeks to be a parallel currency and payment systems that bypasses the need for banks or financial institutions, right? So the key difference between cryptocurrencies and what we traditionally refer to as money or cash is that, for example, when we send money to each other using Pay Now, that transaction is recorded in a certain bank's ledger or books, their records. So the bank has control of that record. But in the case of cryptocurrency, all the transactions are recorded on a decentralized ledger called the blockchain. And what it means is that the ledger is really spread out and stored across many, many, many millions of computers across the network. And the beauty of the blockchain technology is that if a hacker wants to manipulate those ledger, it cannot just hack into a single computer and manipulate information like some hackers try to do with a particular bank. The hackers need to hack into the millions of computers of the network, which is virtually impossible. So that's what that is one key feature that has made blockchain or cryptocurrency that exists on the blockchain a very attractive form of new payment system.
Yeah. And what is the status of cryptocurrency as a matter of law in Singapore?
So cryptocurrency is pretty much a large part of the cryptocurrency ecosystem is still unregulated. So that means there's no law that recognizes cryptocurrency as a form of legal tender. It's up to participants in the cryptocurrency market to recognize and to put a value onto it. And because it's unregulated, it has made it particularly attractive to bad actors to participate in. That's why we have seen a substantial increase in fraud cases within the cryptocurrency environment.
And Nicholas, because of your background and your familiarity with financial technology, would you have something to share with the audience about, whether cryptocurrency investments is, something that can generate such high returns? Are there some risks that come with possible high returns?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's best not to get into the investments. Very volatile, speculative, and actually quite complex to really understand the underlying technology, the structure of investments. If you really want to do it, you have to get really professional and trusted help, which doesn't come by easily, right? Definitely not from, is it John's case, looking at an app and trying to and kind of like I would say definitely be aware of anyone promise fixed high returns, guaranteed returns, and so you really need to really understand the nature of the investment, get professional help before you can really understand this. I think in this case, for John's case, what stood out for me was also that it was a payment link. It's like also simple, right? Just click on payment link and then you are already invested. It doesn't work. Complex financial instruments don't work this way. You have reams and reams of contracts, KYC, AML, and a lot of documents that you sign before you make actual investment. You get to vet through who is the counterparty who's providing you the guarantees and the assurances. In this case, there was none of that. And definitely, I mean, the other thing that maybe just to also call out that I think the scammer said that, oh, your funds are frozen. Well, when you say actually crypto, the nature of such that your funds don't actually get frozen unless it was held in custody by a third party who chose to froze the funds.
So I guess bottom line is, if there is a very attractive investment, but you don't quite understand that investment, you should steer clear, right?
And I think get professional help.
Get professional help. And our Monetary Authority of Singapore has actually said that cryptocurrency is not suitable for retail consumers, right? So that message from our government is very clear. Yeah. And the warning signs that you talked about, Nicholas, was that if it's so simple to do this investment, you just click a credit card link, right? And it seems that, in a very short amount of time, the returns are so great, and that would cause you to be suspicious.
It was unfortunate because this scenario that we listed out, I think I was in a board meeting like recently last week, and one of the board members was saying that, I've been promised this return, I'm waiting for it, and somehow funds are frozen. It was exact and I was like, and this is a person who's on a board and and he understands. So it's really difficult and complex.
Yes. Rosie, you look like you want to say something about that.
My message is everyone is vulnerable. I think in the example that Nicholas has just mentioned, right, a board member coming across an exact same scenario that we've just talked about, there are always going to be signs. And for investment scams, I think I offline discussed this with Wern-Jhien earlier. Basically, investment scams don't start off just as investment. There is a certain level of trust, and in this case, there were positive reviews. There were people that were saying, yes, I've received the same level of returns. I can assure you it's correct. We've seen cases where people are added into chat groups with other scammers, and they're all perpetuating the same message. Don't worry, I've already put in 10,000. You do the same, you can earn X amount of return. So we've seen that so often. If everybody's going to earn so much money, why would I necessarily be so open to share? I want to take all for myself. But, so you've got to question some of these things. That's one in James, in the situation that was shared. But I think it's always that development of trust. In other circumstances, investment scams start with love, start with a certain level of trust. It could be an impersonation of a friend that recommends, this is good stuff. Try this investment. Just put in $3,000. I've just done it. And I've seen that sort of case also. Impersonation of a friend, love. And because this person you've come to trust, come to love, they say, why don't we put in 10,000 in this platform? It will earn us certain returns. You put in 10,000, I'll put in the same amount. Right? But you never actually see your money. At the end of the day, it becomes frozen, you need to put in more money, and that trust is lost. And a lot of times, I think that's why victims find it hard to come out and report cases. It's the impact that being a scam victim, what it has, where the trust level you've built, after a while, you feel embarrassed to come out to say, I've been a victim. I put my love and trust in someone. So a lot of times, this is the challenge. So there's a lot of emotional, not just monetary, that affects the victims along the way as well in scam cases. So I think for investment scams in particular, it doesn't just start out solely as, hey, you want to invest. Usually it's through a friend, through someone you've come to know and love. It usually starts out like that. I'm not sure if we're going to show the MAS video now.
Shall we do that?
We could, but
Okay.
I will just caution that the first thing you notice that when the receiver receives the SMSs is that he says, hey, bro. So it's basically a friend. Could be impersonated, or someone reaching out with an unsolicited number. So maybe watch the video. Yeah.
Sure, let's do that.
Guaranteed 300% returns? Last day. Hey, bro. Last day. Whoa. Whoa. What? Bro.
To see through investment scams, check before you invest.
So the message is check before we invest, right? And that is the safest way to make sure that you are actually investing in legitimate funds and investments. Wen-Jhien, I'm going to come to you for this scenario because a little differently from the other scenarios where the money was lost through account transfers, this one, John paid by credit card. Does that make a difference in his ability to try and recover his money?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. So when we make payment using a credit card, we are effective. But what happens is we are essentially borrowing money to make the payment, and we have to return that money when we pay against our credit card bills at the end of each month, right? So most card issuing banks has some kind of mechanism that allows the cardholders to report fraudulent transaction, typically within a 14-day period. And so in this case, what John can do is to make a report within that time frame. And then what happens with that, the card issuing bank initiate some kind of investigation, which may take weeks, a few months. And if everything checks out, the bank can initiate a cancellation or reversal of the payment. And then the funds paid out could then be refunded and credited to John. So I think that's what's called, that is called chargeback basically in the industry. So that is quite different from a scenario where John has arranged payments to be made out of his bank, because he would then be out of pocket immediately.
I see. So with the credit card system, there is a chance that you can report the transaction as being fraudulent and ask your card issuing bank to try and get a charge back or to reverse the transaction for you.
Yes.
Sometimes people might expect that the bank can stop the transaction because after all, right, is it immediate? Is it possible for the bank to stop the transaction going to the merchant?
So how it is arranged at the back end is that they have a certain reserve funds, which is held by the banks and not paid to the merchants for a number of days. I think it's typically 90 days, 120 days. So when a report is made and a chargeback is allowed, So what that means is that the bank will then utilize the funds in the reserve to pay back the customer or charge back against the credit card customer, and the merchant will then not be able to receive the funds.
Okay, so I'm from the Financial Industry Disputes
Yes,
Resolution
FIDReC,
Center,
yeah.
and we often see complaints from consumers who think that their bank should have done better in trying to stop the money from reaching the merchant. And the banks often share that they have some constraints because they are bound by the rules of the card association, which could be Visa or MasterCard, and so on. From your perspective, Wen-Jhien, is there a balance here that can be struck? Is it possible for customers to always expect that the banks return their money for situations like the one that John had gone through?
So that's a difficult one, because I think the starting point is we all have to be responsible for our own financial decisions, right? As is the case with John here. And banks, they play a very important role in our economy, in our society. And the rules and the laws are structured such that they have to be accountable, or they have to take responsibility, but up to a certain extent. But beyond that, it's a bit difficult to pin all the responsibility onto the bank, especially when we talk about digital transactions. And by that, what I mean is transactions that occurred using our phones or internet banking, which does not involve any human actors acting on behalf of the bank. So you can't really say in those cases that the bank has somehow been put on notice that the transaction may potentially be fraudulent or the instructions may be valid. Unlike in the old days where transactions happen over the counter in a branch of a bank. So it's a very difficult line to be drawn, I think, to strike a balance between who should bear responsibility.
All right.
For the transaction.
So I think for our audience, the important thing to bear in mind is we have a responsibility to be careful before we make payments using our credit card. We should do the checking that Wen-Jhien, that Nicholas and Rosie have reminded us to do. And yes, the bank has some responsibilities, and we will have, institutions like the Monetary Authority of Singapore to hold them accountable. But that means that we should also make sure we play our part, right? Okay. Let's move to our last scenario. And I do think there'll be quite a lot of questions we can take with that scenario, because it involves a malware scam. And we've got lots of questions about, how to detect such things. Okay, let's move to that. And in line with what Rosie said, right, scams can happen to anyone. Here we have Elijah, who's a university student who likes to look out for good deals, like many of us. While surfing social media, he comes across a post promoting an ORD voucher for males who have completed their national service. This post asks the reader to join a Telegram group to find out how to claim this voucher. Elijah joins the group and follows the instructions. He installs the app, and after downloading the app, he starts facing issues to launching the app. He asked about this in his Telegram group, and his contact says try again tomorrow. So he goes about his day as usual, and when he wakes up the next morning, that's when he sees all these notifications from his bank about fund transfers, credit card, cash advances, and even credit card payments that he did not perform. Well, Nicholas, let's come to you. Can you share with us about how this could have happened, right? He was just sleeping, he didn't do anything. And yet, by simply downloading something, he has lost so much. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, I have a background in technology and some background in cybersecurity. Even then, I think it's sometimes quite hard to get into specifics, because Android itself is designed to be a very open platform. There are many ways to implement a platform like that. All this technology keeps evolving. There's this thing in the industry we call the 0-day vulnerability. When you patch, when you update it, your app, your OS, and there are sometimes new bugs or exploits that these scammers could use. So it's quite tough to really drill into the specific scenarios. But I think in essence, what we're talking about here is the ability to capture your screen, see what's going on, is the ability to log your actions. In the PC world, we call it the key logging function, right? And then exploit. I believe that in a scenario like that, I think SPF has seen quite a lot of money being lost in the last in the first 6 months. I saw the news release in September. It was like more than 10 million. And usually in this kind of scenario, after the malware is installed in the form of a Android package kit or APK, normally after that, there's some transaction being made with the bank, like maybe a small transaction, $5, $10, and then the scammer or the fraudster know your banking credentials, and then starts to make transactions on your phone. And in I think some of these cases, they actually have exploit in some of these OS to reboot the phone as well, right? So Rosie would have.
No, it's totally on point. I think the fact is that with other typical scams is how much money you've collected. But in an Android download of an APK file with a malware installed, whatever banking credentials that they capture, whatever is in your bank account, they can wipe out. So it's not just about maybe I put in 10,000 in an investment, I lose 10,000. That's a limit, right? But malware is different. Overnight, not even overnight, within 1 hour, 2 hours, the entire amount of money in the bank account can disappear. And they have evolved where they will speak to you, the scammers will speak to you over the phone as they are running the app, okay, getting all your data. Then the phone will suddenly switch off, be factory reset. We've seen that as a variant. So the victim on their end will be like, hey, my phone's switched off. I need to switch it on. I switch it on. I realize everything's gone. My app is not how it used to be. So the victim doesn't receive all the SMSs, the OTPs that comes from the bank. It actually is reflected on the screen that the scammers have. And they are using that opportunity where you're trying to figure out your reset phone to basically wipe out your bank account. So that's the real seriousness and dangers of malware scams, where you cannot limit what the scammers can do with the information that they have on your phone. And like with the whole panel has discussed, your phone is so important, so much information on it, right? So I think this is really something members of the public out there really have to be very, very discerning of downloading what they have on their phones. I think banks like OCBC came out to really try to safeguard their app to make sure their clients are safeguarded in that way. When it came out with certain measures. And I think this is some of the things that agencies are doing. Government is also trying to push for certain things to make sure we try to safeguard. But at the end of the day, as a user, as a victim, we may put up how many firewalls. Is whether you allow access of the app to access your phone, your camera function. Sometimes, they ask you these questions, right? Do you allow access to your camera? Do you allow access to your photo gallery? If you click yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I think it's important because actually all this is very scary, that not only can you lose all your money, and in the scenario we have, Elijah also had cash advances taken from his credit card, loans, right? So you could lose all your money, be saddled with a lot of debt without even realizing it. And the starting point is that you download this package, the APK file, right, that you mentioned. So tell us how we spot this. How do we identify that what we are downloading is safe and doesn't have malware? Nicholas and Rosie?
I think CSA came out recently, quite recently, to really support this educational front, where it's important to maybe have a download of an antivirus application on your phone to run. Again, a slight caution, if you're downloading anything, it has to come from the official Play Store or the equivalent for iPhones, right? You shouldn't be downloading from anywhere, especially not from people who are sending you links to download. So that's one. But I'm not saying that it's 100% foolproof even on the Play Stores. So it's important you know what you're downloading. A few telltale indicators would be some of the reviews. But again, we've discussed reviews can sometimes be
Can be fake.
Yeah. So it's important to look at some of these things. And like I mentioned, I think what's important is you just have to overall be very discerning of the information, what you're downloading.
Okay, so Rosie, you've covered that we should, number one, before we download, see where you're downloading from, right? If it's on the official Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, chances are better that it's legitimate, but still not 100%. You should check the reviews. Do they all look the same? Are there sufficient numbers so it looks a bit more legitimate, right? So these are some of the things that we can do. And Nicholas, would you have anything to add to that? What are the signs?
I think Rosie covered all the points, right? The download from the official app store. Don't download from dodgy links. Know what you're downloading. I myself, even though I use Apple, I install this anti-malware, antivirus apps to protect myself.
Okay, so also download this antivirus, anti-malware apps on your device. And I think now there might be many people who are feeling worried because, all this while we have been downloading various things. How do we tell if there's malware on our phone? Is there a way to check?
I think there's one possibility is to see whether there are signs. There's certain signs if a malware is installed on your phone, which would include things like unexplained data, right? It's running in the background consistently and more than your usual. That's one possibility. Because it's running in the background, your battery drains faster. You will notice maybe your phone being a little bit slow, buggy, like it's not as responsive. It really depends, right, on the malware that they've installed. At the same time, there may be random pop-ups or unsolicited messages that come in to your phone. And I think maybe things like your phone restarts randomly. So that could be something that you want to really pay attention to. There are a few other options that I've also seen before and noted. One possibility is in the Google Play Store. You can look at the Play Protect. So that's one option. When you go down to your telcos, some of the telcos do offer some built-in antivirus package with your plan. So that could be something you consider. And that would be legitimate, right? If you're concerned about downloading it from Play Store. And when CSA came up with the list of antivirus apps that you could consider, some are free and some are paid for. You should just be aware that there's a difference between the free ones and the ones that you pay. So you might want to read up a little bit of that. And again, download from official sources only. Yeah.
Yes. Don't rush to download an antivirus app and accidentally download a malware app. So
yeah,
just do that checking.
right.
That list that Rosie has shared, that's from CSA, right? The Cyber Security Agency of
That's
Singapore.
right.
These would be some examples of antivirus software that's legitimate. Okay. Wern-Jhien, coming to you, this situation for Elijah seems a little bit more urgent than the other ones where we might have time to, gather evidence and report to the police and call our banks. Would you suggest something different for Elijah's scenario now that he's woken up in the morning and notices all these things? What should he do?
Yeah, I think I saw in the case scenario that when he woke up in the morning, he saw a lot of notifications about transactions that happened overnight. So many banks in Singapore, actually most of them, now have implemented this notification system that alerts banking customers of any significant transactions or transactions above a certain threshold, right? And in tandem with that, the bank will typically also have a certain hotline for customers to call up to and report unauthorized transactions. And so I would think Elijah, as a matter of priority, should make that call, and then through that hotline, initiate an investigation, and hopefully, if the call was made prompt enough, the bank can then take steps to cancel or reverse the transactions.
Okay, so here it's very urgent, right? So you're suggesting that Elijah quickly contacts the bank to activate that kill switch. Sometimes we hear it being referred to as that, so that everything can be frozen before more investigation is taken. Okay, and we've also seen that in terms of in Elijah's situation, maybe it's a bit too late because by the time he's woken up, all these transactions have already gone through. But if the scenario was a little bit different, and as he's using the phone, he notices what Rosie mentioned, he's starting to behave a bit oddly and so on. Is there something he could do then to try and, prevent further loss? Wen-Jhien or?
I'm not sure, but I think the immediacy is still the priority. Inform the banks to stop, prevent any losses from his accounts. I think in some banking apps, there are the options to kill switch within the app itself. So that would aid in having that immediacy. So I think that's important. Priority would be to call the banks, stop, prevent any further actions.
Yeah. And we wouldn't use that same device, right? The compromised device. You would use another device to quickly call your bank or log into your app to try and activate this kill switch.
Yeah.
If we turn off our phone or put it to flight mode, does that help things?
It does help to a certain extent. The malware will still be running potentially, but the information may not be going back. So that would be one of the ways that we would recommend. And we've put out some of these advisories as well on what exactly you should do to really try to isolate the issue and then prevent it from escalating as you're trying to resolve it with the banks.
Yes. So I think that's important because, Rosie, you mentioned that sometimes the scammers get you, by resetting your phone, they delay you, right? But really the immediate action is you want to act very quickly, right? To stop further transactions from your account. In terms of recovery, Wen-Jhien, do you think in this situation, there's a chance of recovery on Elijah's part?
As a lawyer, I must say there's always a chance. Question is the amount of effort and amount of legal expense required. Because as long as the transaction takes place through the banking system, there's always a possibility of tracing the money flow. The worry is when it reaches a certain account and then cash withdrawals happen. Or worse still, in these days, it reaches a certain account and then it gets converted into crypto, for example, which is very, very difficult to trace. But up to that kind of that point, there are options. It really depends on how fast and how quickly the victim gets.
And for amounts that are maybe not so large as to maybe justify having a lawyer to pursue these measures that you talked about, what could a consumer do to try to recover?
Well, again, there are options. Report to police. If they're not happy with the bank, we can play to the FIDReC. That happens quite a lot. And if they still want to think about legal remedies, there are obviously avenues to get pro bono help or low bono, basically legal services at affordable rates. There are also certain NGOs out there that work very closely with certain law firm networks to help victims of this sort to seek recovery, especially in those cross-border cases.
Okay, we've got lots of questions that I think we can now turn to. One question which has been upvoted a fair bit is about getting scam calls with the plus or +65 prefix. And the question is, how can we tell, right? How do we know whether these calls which have this prefix is a scam call or not? Can we assume that if it is +65, therefore it's a scam?
I think we've gone out quite strongly. If you're receiving an unknown number with a +65, unless you're expecting an overseas call, or otherwise it would not appear as such. A +65, it's more likely than not scam. So that would be something that we advise. But nowadays, the scammers have spoofed numbers. So they no longer appear as a +65. So you may think it's someone that you just don't know, don't have their number saved on your mobile phone. And that's where telltale indicators, you should be asking yourself, who is this person on the line? Get him or her to say who they are and not be caught in their deceit. Yeah. So I would say that +65, I would say, not recommended to pick up at all. And even if it's an unknown number, have a certain level of skepticism when you pick up the call, if you choose to pick up the call.
Okay. And I suppose the other perspective is what's the worst that can happen, right? If you don't pick up and it is a legitimate call and not a scam call, maybe they'll call again. Maybe they'll try and reach you through other ways.
That is true.
Well, I did receive some calls recently from, I can't remember, it's FIDReC, and I thought it was a scam, so I put it down. And when they want to contact you and get your money, they have other ways. They drop you mails and everything, and I think somebody shipped something to me, and there was a GST to be paid, and I thought it was like, maybe it's a scam, right? And then they will use mails and all that.
Actually, I had an experience with a +65, and I thought it was a scam, and I hung up. And then it came again. And when I listened a bit more, I realized it was one of those automated reservation confirmation systems. So it calls you and they ask you to press 1 to confirm your reservation for this place, Yeah. So I suppose the important thing is, like all our panelists have said, scammers use our sort of fear, our nervousness, our worry that, time is short, we need to respond to get us. So maybe, we just have to be a bit more relaxed. Even though Singaporeans quite hard, we're always very kanchiong.
I mean, from SCPC, we always say that don't panic when we receive these calls, right? Sometimes they cast fear. There's some they use the scams or pretending to be China officials, customs officers, and just don't panic. Don't share your personal information and don't give any money. Yeah.
Okay, so don't panic. Don't share your personal information. Don't give any money. Yes. Next question. I think all these are great questions because everyone is questioning what we do each day. Is fingerprint lock more secure than password? So, we always lock our phones, right? Whether by way of a code, by drawing a pattern, by fingerprint, by your face. Is there one way that is more secure than another?
From technology point, I would say so. I would say because the problem is when you have passwords, then you tend to save or write the passwords down somewhere where the fraudster or the scammer can potentially get hold of. I've seen situations in my work in cybersecurity where you have the most secure IT equipment and the administrator writes the password on the screen. Right. And I walk past like, oh, that's your administrator password, right? So in that sense, just from the human behavior point of view, having a fingerprint actually can be in terms of user behavior, it's a bit safer. Right.
Yeah. And I think when they install the malware, they will have a mirror screen of exactly what you're typing, what you're doing. And it's a lot harder to probably mimic that biometric compared to a pattern or a number.
Okay, so I guess the short answer to that question is yes, fingerprint lock may be more secure than typing in a password because it won't be locked by keystrokes. It doesn't show up on the mirror screen and you won't have to write it down anywhere.
It's not always 100%. There's always exceptional scenarios, right? If it was you were asleep and there's somebody can use your fingerprint, right? It's not 100%.
True.
I mean, we're always assuming the scenarios are remote, the scammers are from somewhere else in some other country, but it could also be somebody who's...
Yeah, at FIDReC, we've also seen those scenarios where you think you've been scammed, but actually it's your child spending your money. Yes. So,
but at least you'll be alert. You're like, there's a deduction.
Okay, another question. There's a lot of individuals doing business on Facebook and probably other social media platforms as well. How do you detect a fake and genuine seller? is a sponsored post always a sign that, something's not right?
I think it's just hard to generally be able to discern between the legitimate ones and the scammer ones. The safeguards will always be, do I need to download anything? Do I need to click any links? These sellers may ask for a deposit. And one of the scam variants we've seen is they ask you for a deposit, you give a $5 deposit for a good deal. Again, it's a good deal. It's always the case. Subsequently, they say, I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill your order. I will need you to maybe download this app or click this link so that you can provide me your credit card details or your bank account details. Then I can do the refund subsequently. They use this tactic to basically fish the information from. So I won't say you can outrightly view, but if you do come across something that you feel this advertisement is suspicious, report it, right? So the administrators of that social media platform can look into the details and see whether they should take action. So I think that's one important thing. But the bottom line is, if they're asking you for a deposit, then do they ask you to download something, click something to refund you? Are they making it difficult? Are they still eventually asking you for your personal details? Right? Yeah. Or always ask for cash on delivery.
Which actually takes us to another question, which is that with all these scams, how do you balance the risks and the convenience, right? Is it better, the question asks, to go back to using cash till there's better security in our society? Another question is, should we go back to physical bank tokens, right?
Well, COD is safer in a sense, not 100% in the sense. Sometimes there's been cases where it's COD, but you don't open up or don't check the quality of the goods and all of that. But generally, you meet in person, you collect the goods, you inspect, and it should be safer. But it depends on the platform that you buy from. Some platforms do a better job to protect their consumers. Like, without naming names of the platforms, some platforms will spend millions and millions of dollars to make sure that their consumers are protected. They give some kinds of protection. There are some other platforms who provide escrow services for payments and all of that. So I do hope that we don't go back to everything have to be face-to-face and COD.
I think there's a balance to be struck. Sure. And certain platforms, if they have the payment options to use through the platforms, use that. Right? Don't go out through Pay Now, Pay La, because the platforms will help you hold the money until you receive the goods and things like that.
Well, avoiding the off-platform transactions.
Yeah.
Okay. So we may not want to go back to just using cash. It is convenient to use our digital payments, but the important thing then is just to be aware, in a way, we don't trust, right? We make sure that people earn our trust before we part with our money. Yeah. Okay. There are a number of questions also on, they're fast and furious, about a lot of messages. Okay, messages where you get saying that you could get a loan, and there's minimal checks. Would all this automatically be scams? Give you loan, give you credit. Wern-Jhien? There's some law against this, right?
I thought there's a law against solicitation of loans and all that. So to me, default, all of them are scam.
You're probably right. So yeah, you're probably right. This day and age, in any financial transaction, the first port of call, the dummy's guide, if you can call it that, is go to the MAS website. They check whether the provider is licensed. If they're licensed, then the risk reduces dramatically. The minute you deal with an unlicensed player within any part of the financial industry, that chances are you are getting yourself in trouble.
I think remember the licensed players are not allowed to solicit.
Yes, so licensed financial institutions are not allowed to offer loans through social media platforms. So I think we all agree that we can safely say if someone is offering you loan or credit over social media, it's not legitimate. You
I
do
use
it at your
the-
own risk.
If I get it on WhatsApp, I use the block and report.
Block and report, right? That's the other thing we can do. We can block and report so that others, we can protect others
That's right.
and use Scam Shield to report as well.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for all the questions. I'm afraid we've run out of time and I will have to bring the webinar to a close. But before I do that, I'll just ask each panelist, okay, we'll go down the line to give us one quick takeaway on this topic of how to protect ourselves, how to spot and avoid scams.
I'm not sure if my takeaway is quick, but on Rosie's earlier point about acts, right? Add the Scam Shield app from NCPC, protect yourself, right? Check, right? If you have doubts or suspicions, get a second opinion from your friends, from your family, or call our anti-scam helpline at 1-800-722-6688 and tell your friends and family. We have this WhatsApp service where you can take messages and share with your friends and family.
Okay, ask, check, tell. Wern-Jhien?
Well, I'll try to be a little bit different. I think what I can say is on cryptocurrency specifically, if you don't understand blockchain, if you don't understand the technology behind it, do not get in.
Okay, steer clear of what you do not fully
If I can add
understand.
to that, I tell people, if you don't know how to build your own blockchain, then don't.
Even a higher threshold. You don't know how to build a blockchain.
Complicated. Not as easy as clicking a link.
Yes.
Rosie,
I think the key message I would go across to everyone would be everyone is vulnerable, right? We've seen celebrities, we've seen certain people fall victims. And so even if I would to stereotype certain groups falling to specific scam types, I want to highlight that everyone is vulnerable to every scam type. It is important then we be discerning with the information we're providing, what we're downloading, what we're clicking, because these are ways that the scammers will just try their luck, cast their net wide. So bottom line, and echoing Nicholas' point as well, is that you need to act against scams. Act, check, and tell. These are the three things that really, as a baseline, you must do, right? And then follow, some of the information, scam trends that's going out. That's important, right? So that would be my key takeaway.
okay, so ask, check, ask.
Yeah.
Add, check,
Yeah.
tell, and also keep up to date on the changing nature of scam.
And learn to build your own blockchain.
And if you want, learn to build your own
If you want
blockchain.
to.
Okay, I hope that you enjoyed and benefited from today's session. And if you know of a family or friend who may also benefit, we will have a Mandarin version of this webinar coming up. 保护自己如何发现和避免诈骗. This is next Tuesday, 14 November at 7 p.m. by Zoom. So I'll be moderating that as well. So I hope that some of you will join us there. And also take note that we have many more webinars as part of Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2023. You can now scan the QR code. This is a real one, or visit the website go.gov.sg/lawcdc 2023 to register for the many webinars available. At the end of this webinar, a survey form will pop up on your screen. This is not malware. It is to invite you to give your comments to us because we would really appreciate that. It will help us to improve future webinars. And lastly, after today's fantastic sharing from our panelists, if you find that you do require some legal guidance or help, please write to help@probono.sg. Now I would like to thank Nicholas, Wern-Jhien, and Rosie for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. And with that, on behalf of Pro Bono SG, we would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Have a great evening.
And thank you, Eunice.
Yes, thank you,
for-
Eunice. Thank you.